Welcome to your daily dose of theological German, and we're still on this Paul Tillich article about the theology of culture. It's been pretty interesting so far. So it's a shorter sentence today, but that's good because I would like to dig into a couple of things, and so it's always good to be able to do that when you don't have so much text to work through. And so let's go ahead and just kind of look at a couple of things first before we start translating. Here, I want to draw your attention to this es ist. You might be familiar with the es ist construction, also the es gibt construction, typically predicators of existence, meaning, you translate them something like there is. However, in those cases, you would need there to be a predicate nominative, some sort of a noun that you're predicating the existence of. There is a cat, or something like that. You don't have that here. Instead, you'll notice there's this adjective, impossible. And so this is not a es ist construction that you might be thinking of. This is more like you've got to treat ist as if it's the verb and es as if it's the subject and say it. It is, and what that immediately invites you to think about is, what is it referring to? And so this is a classic case where you have a kind of clause fragment where you have this expression. These often happen with Sein verbs where the it needs to be filled out, and that's filled out by way of a zu construction. And so you'll find those zu constructions down at the end. If you want to find this stuff in April Wilson's textbook, you can look in chapter 20. But you should find a section on this in any German grammar because it's a common kind of feature of German syntax. So you find the zu construction at the end. It's formed by the preposition zu, and the infinitive form of the verb in this case, bilden, means to form, to set up or something like that. And so here we have, it is impossible to form. So let's go ahead and start translating from the beginning. On this ground, or you could say something like, for this reason. This is kind of a discourse construction, so it's not talking about actual ground. It's referring back to what Tillich said in the previous sentence. You can go check out that episode from yesterday. It basically is talking about how in the cultural sciences, you don't really get to use the categories of right and wrong in the same way you do in the empirical sciences, because cultural science, this actual study of culture, is part of culture, and so you lose the kind of, at least the claim on sort of your objective stance outside just assessing an absolute reality. You're creating the reality as you're studying it, according to Tillich. And so, on those grounds, and for that reason, this is what he wants to say. It is also impossible to form useful, and then you have this word, which we're going to come back to, allgemein Begriffe. So it's impossible to form useful somethings from cultural ideas. This here is a compound word, and so you have culture and idea. So you can't form whatever these things are from cultural ideas. The reason I want to focus on this word is because this is also a compound word, and I want to show you, again, we've done this a few times in the past, but it's always useful just to look what happens when you look up these things in the dictionary. So first of all, you should be able to see that this is where it's going to split, okay? And you're going to go and try to look up allgemein in the dictionary and then put it together with whatever Begriffe is and see what you get. And what you'll discover is that you have actually a very useful entry. This is Cassell's dictionary. So first, although you may have already noticed that there's a cheater down there, but first you're going to see here allgemein. And we actually need to look at both of these entries and you'll see why. So it means something like general or universal, prevailing opinion. Okay, so you kind of get the sense, the semantic sense of the range of that word. And instead of looking up Begriff, we're going to actually notice that you have this particular compound word already listed, that you can put this in your translation from this entry right here. So you'll see it's going to be something like general idea or notion. But then you see here, and this is where it's really important, this tells you that in philosophical usage, it's really getting at the idea of a concept. However, here you don't probably want to say general concept, because if you've been tracking with what Tillich has said so far, I mean, that would be a correct translation, but it's not going to quite get the emphasis that I think he's really trying to make. And that's where you want to come back up here and just look at the adjective itself, allgemein, and notice that universal is on the table as a way of thinking about, and general, of course, means something very similar in English to universal. But I think what you want to do is you want to say a universal concept. I think that's what Tillich is getting at, that you can't form useful universal concepts from cultural ideas.